You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there and welcome. Thank you for pressing play on this episode. I am going to share a few things about a recent experience that I had, like yesterday, around family trauma drama. But before I do that, two things really quick. First, I think I mentioned in the last episode that I am in kind of a transition with this podcast. And so I want to let you know where I'm going with this. Now, I have come to the realization that what lights me up is interacting with other humans. Okay, maybe we already knew that. And that lends itself to talking about relationships. All kinds of relationships for sure, but I think the ones that will get focus will be family related, like your family of origin. Whatever that looks like, we're going to go with that and see where it lands. Because there are certainly elements of codependency, perfectionism, and people-pleasing when it comes to trying to find acceptance within your own family. And navigating that, well, it can sometimes be a bit of a landmine. That is for sure. Your family of origin knows your core wounds and triggers, and they sometimes tend to exploit them, either knowingly or unknowingly. It is what humans do. So thank you for being here with me for the past 2 years. 2 years. And I'm excited to see where this is going to evolve. Second, I attended a baby shower this past weekend for the first time in years. I underestimated the amount of planning it would take on my part to find an appropriate gift. Okay, let's be honest. I didn't even look at the registry. I just didn't. I thought I could just figure it out, and I found myself an hour before the baby shower at Target grabbing a big box of diapers and some onesies. I'm thinking, new parents just don't understand that there can never be enough diapers and onesies. I was there myself. I get it, right? So my gift is the last gift to be opened for some reason. I'm not sure why it was the finale. And I just about lost my own shit when I heard just a few minutes before the gifts that I brought would be opened that Mom planned to use cloth diapers. Oh my God, of course. Had I checked that registry, I would have known that. Anyway, I guess it was all good because Dad was kind of excited to have some backup diapers just in case this whole idea of cloth diapers goes south. He didn't look too certain, I just gotta say. Oh, check the damn registries, my friends. And this is a great segue into today's topic because it is around family trauma drama, though maybe not in the ways that you might expect. I'm going to share a couple of fumbles that I had in a new Facebook group recently, and probably part of why I walked into a huge steaming pile of shit in that particular group was likely because I did not refamiliarize myself with the group's rules before I said words. Kind of like I didn't check the baby registry, I just winged it. And part of this conversation has to do with what you consider family, right? Is it your family of origin, meaning that you share DNA? Those who are responsible for creating you, birthing you, and maybe your siblings too? Or does the word family hold a much deeper meaning to include step-parents, half-siblings, adopted siblings, and so many other variations? Like, Friendsgiving is now a thing to replace the family tradition of Thanksgiving gatherings when your family of origin and or extended family is either unaccepting of you or simply not available. Perhaps they are no longer living. That becomes more of a reality for many of us the older that we get. Now, I want you to keep all of this in mind as I share my experience from yesterday. It was not pleasant at all. Now, I've made no secret that I am an adoptive parent. And for some time now, I have wanted to share the story here because it is a beautiful story. In my personal experience, it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. And while I have been thinking about this and pondering how to share my personal perspective without giving too much away about my son's family of origin, well, this happened. Because I fully recognize that one of the most beautiful moments of my life may also have been one of the most devastating moments for the birth mom. I have always kept this in mind for the duration. Now, I was recently added to a group that has commingled pretty much all of the roles involved in adoption: adoptees, birth parents or first parents, and adoptive parents. What I didn't have full awareness of was that is the hierarchy in terms of engagement. Adoptive parents, or APs, are last in line. And this was part of the rules I was aware of, that the adoptee experience is to be centered around all conversations. I just didn't fully get that it would apply to everything. Like, I had been there long enough to know that for the first 72 hours, I was automatically muted and encouraged to listen. Okay, that's fair. Then, when you start going through the posts, and many of them are clearly marked with adoptees or first families only can respond until you get a green light to comment. So, I thought that this one post was safe to comment on because there was not a clear marker stating that I couldn't. And the question was around the language that we use when we speak of adoption. It seemed to be open to all of the roles, right? For example, I was advised by our agency from the very onset of us submitting our paperwork that the language I was supposed to use when describing the experience to my child later as he grows and develops was that his birth mother placed him for adoption. She didn't give him up. She did not relinquish him. It may have been a difficult choice, an unimaginably difficult choice, but it was the choice that she chose at the time. Things like that. So here I come to this post like a freaking bull in a china shop that is supposed to be around language and what do we use and why do we use it, what are the terms, that kind of thing. I thought it was a fairly benign question, all things considered. Man, was I ever wrong. You all, they came for me hard Because the other part that I shared was that what I've already mentioned, it was a beautiful experience. Well, yeah, for you it was. This is what they're telling me now. This was their response to me posting, oh, it was a beautiful experience. Maybe it was for you. But for me, this is just another example, and I am completely paraphrasing, something along the lines of that baby was ripped from his mother and placed in your arms, and so therefore he holds trauma automatically from that experience. And if you can't see that, you are missing all of the points. I was like, what? Wait just a minute here. He's cool. He's well adjusted. He is a generally and genuinely happy human. I thought it was okay to share my experience, but I was very rapidly met with a full-on vibe of, how dare you? How dare you try to paint a pretty picture of adoption, and the industry itself is rife with problematic language, and if your child isn't a mess yet, he will be. And it's people like you that ensure that. Oh my God, that was the biggest gut punch, you all. And again, I am paraphrasing. I am not reading aloud the comments. I am not trying to give any of this away. But even though I've already mentioned here that the birthing process itself is traumatic, it just is for all of us. I've mentioned it here on this podcast before. Being born is a traumatic experience. Every single one of us have been there. I may never have given birth, but I've certainly been born. And there is that level of awareness and experience, that level. And it reminded me immediately of early on in my ally work with BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. I was called all the way out for commenting on a post that was meant to be for BIPOC only. And this was a completely different group, by the way. This was several years ago. I do recall that post was clearly marked as such, and I've always remembered that. My lesson that came from that stumble back then was, read the damn question in full. Read the instructions. Check the damn baby registry. So I thought, well, I did that. There was no clear indication that I should not comment on this one, but man, was I ever wrong. I stepped right in it big time. And what came from this is that I realized, after sitting with the experience for about 24 hours now, I realized that by and large, this group was about living in their trauma, about owning it, and in some cases even embracing it. It was about wholly and fully allowing their trauma to be their very identity. And here I come with, adoption is a beautiful experience. They were not having it. They were not allowing me to have it. And they certainly were not allowing me to speak for the well-being of my child. In fact, many of them assured me again that he was going to have all kinds of issues with this later in life because they have issues. So this must be automatically true for all humans, right? They assured me that I am clueless. Phew, that was a hard thing to come to terms with. In fact, since it is so very recent, I may still not have fully come to terms with it. Oh, and the other thing that I was accused of was making adoption all about rainbows and butterflies, when it is not about putting a positive spin on adoption that I now understand for many of this particular group's members was anything but. And so part of this is about trauma projection, right? If I have it, then so does everyone else who crosses my path in this manner. The other part is that apparently me sharing that it was a wonderful experience automatically cancels out or erases the trauma experience of others. That is not what was said, but those were the actions that were taken. Those were the crux of the comments. And I just don't believe that. I don't. And I don't believe that there is a one-size-fits-all approach to trauma, to family drama, or to the groupthink approach. I have really pulled away from the latter, the groupthink, in the past couple of years because it just wasn't resonating with me at all. It wasn't calling to my soul. I felt like I was being herded in this direction, and these are the things that I'm supposed to do and say and think in order to be accepted by the tribe. And I am referring to the coaching world here. I am referring to that industry. It was a very similar experience for me, and letting go of that, or removing myself from that notion that everyone needs to be the same, was probably the most painful part of the letting go process for me within that community, within the coaching community. Regarding this particular event within the adoption community, it seemed that we are reducing all adoptees down to the lowest common denominator, which is that they are adopted, and therefore, by extension, by very extension, they are deeply traumatized. And maybe that is true. Maybe that is true to the same extent that people of color are traumatized and carry generational trauma. But how I prefer to view it is this. Maybe we can hold space for both. Maybe we can acknowledge that some humans have trauma as a result of the adoption industry, and some have beautiful experiences. The existence of one for an individual or several does not automatically cancel out the existence of the other for someone else. It's this binary thinking that I swear we keep getting caught up in, myself included. It's this or that. It's either or. You cannot exist in a place of shadows and shine a light where it is not welcome, because then you are not honoring the shadows of others. And I have been on the other side of that too. I haven't been positive enough in some spaces, yet I am too positive in others. Clearly. Case in point here with what I'm sharing on this episode. It's all rainbows and unicorns and butterflies from Sunny's perspective. That was part of the accusation. Well, that's actually not the case. And if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you may be a little confused by that statement. Just saying. And by the way, the source of this knowledge that I'm sharing here is my own heart. That is what is most important for me to point out to everyone listening to this. And I also want to come back to the generational trauma for just a moment and all of the traumas that we are carrying, because I personally am on a mission to break those cycles and not continue them on. So there's that. There's that perspective too. It's like, okay, I recognize this. I see this. Now, how can we do better? How can we create a better experience for our children and our grandchildren and our children's grandchildren? How can we do that? And it starts with us. It starts today. We don't have to continue carrying this. But I'm not going to cite sources and share articles. That is being done in the social media groups. It is being done with gusto, in fact. And articles are great, but they are generally flawed and biased in their research. Anecdotal stories are great, but they are simply one person's opinion based on their own lens and experience. The source of truth is inside of you. That's why I am not keen on sharing any references for you on any of the topics discussed here today. You can find your own references. You can find your own truth, because your truth is yours. That belongs to you. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, not even your own family, and certainly not any group in the online space. As Rumi says, the only lasting beauty is the beauty of the heart. Ah, yes. Since we are talking about all things beautiful, let's be sure to acknowledge the beauty of the heart. I know what is in mine. I know where I was coming from when I offered up my perspective. And I know that it not being well received had very little to do with me or with anything that I shared. It had everything to do with the lens through which those who saw it were filtering my words. I do not believe that I was dismissive of anyone's trauma or personal experience. In fact, it is my literal job not to be. So it was so very challenging to have the tables turned on me in that way, as if I were the enemy invading that particular space. And it's not the first time I've ever been told, you just don't get it. I seriously doubt that it will be the last. Nevertheless, I know what is in my heart. I know I was coming from a place of compassion, if not yet full understanding and awareness of what I was actually walking into. Not every tribe that you come across is going to match your vibe. It is all good. I just want to reiterate that we don't have to try to cancel each other out. Maybe it's completely okay to have your own experience while acknowledging the place of harm and resentment that others may be coming from. And just as I don't have to take on your pain as my own, you of course do not have to take on my joy as your own. This isn't an either-or scenario, this life. It is what you know to be true inside of you. I want you to keep this in mind when you are communicating with others, either online, through voice, in person. We are all unique individuals. We can honor that much about ourselves. We can appreciate the moments of connection and agreement, and we can also learn from the disconnect and the trials of this existence. And through our own unique and fully individualized approaches, we can learn to light up and shine on.